So far till now, this was the agenda for day 1 and 2 and 3. And so far, we covered only the security foundation part and great part from the security threats. We still have a lot of topics to discuss, a lot of labs to do, so let's go ahead. So yesterday we discussed what are the different types of malware. It is a kind of cyber threat. We discussed what is the virus, malware, rootkit, Trojan horse, and all of this stuff. Today we are continuing in description or discussing cyber threat, but now we will talk about the attacks. So from your perspective and based on the knowledge that we gained during our last class, what is the difference between the malware and the attack? Can someone give me an explanation for this? So in fact, attacks rely on the existence of malware. Take, for instance, when we were discussing the denial of service attack. Can somebody give me like a refreshment about what was the denial of service attack? That's right. That's right. And how we instructed our this or how we created this botnet by distributing a virus. So malware is a way to prepare for an attack. When I talk about a ransomware attack is an attack, but it relies on the background on a virus that do this sort of encryption for the files and data and so on. Okay? So the denial of service attack is type of attacks. We discussed what is a DOS and what is a DDoS. We also has another type of attack which is called the buffer overflow attack. And in buffer overflow attack, this is a kind of attack that target vulnerable application. And the goal of this attack is either make this application non-responsive, does not respond to user requests, or take control over this machine. Does anybody, if you heard before about the term buffer overflow? Okay, so in short, we have in any operating system, we have operating system and we have a memory or random access memory RAM, right? So consider the RAM is something like this, and you have like blocks or spaces in the RAM. Some of it are reserved to the applications that are running on the interface or on this operating system, and some of these applications or some of these spaces in the RAM is reserved to system itself. So for any application that is running or can access the space of the system or the space in the RAM that is specified for system itself, this application will have a high privilege. The goal of buffer overflow attack is that the hacker will flood the application with too many requests and too many data. The application will try to write this data in its space inside the part or a single portion of the RAM. But due to application misconfiguration or due to a vulnerability in the system, the data that are out of the limits of the application will not be stopped if this space of memory got filled, but it will be overflowed to other parts in memory, including some parts that are related to system itself. By doing so, the hacker will not only be able to read and access the data of the application reside on the RAM, but also the data in the system itself reside in the part of the memory that is specified for system applications. I know it's a quite bit complicated scenario to discuss, but buffer overflow attack target the exploits or target the vulnerability in operating system, and it especially rely on taking advantage for programs that is waiting for user input. And because we don't have what is called the boundary check, which is something that we configure or program in our application that is related to memory management, the hacker can do this kind of attack, which can lead at the end to an attack called escalation of privilege or privilege escalation, or the DOS attack as well, by making the system non-responsive. So buffer overflow is an attack that is related to random access memory. Okay. We have another interesting application. Sure, go ahead. You want to add something? Okay. So we have another attack which is quite bit famous, which is the man in the middle attack. And the man in the middle attack is, as the name implies, it is a kind of attack that we have two parties that are communicating with each others, and they are transferring and receiving and sending the data by this way. But we will have someone with special tools and equipment can intercept this traffic, and instead of the normal traffic is going this way, and the reply is coming back from this way, the man in the middle attack will cause the traffic to go to the hacker. The hacker can intercept this traffic and modify it if needed, and then send it to the target system. And when the target system reply, instead of sending the reply back to the target or the original source, the attack or the data will be sent to the hacker. Hacker can intercept it and send it back to the original source. Could you tell me how hacker can do something like this? How he can modify the flow of the traffic in the network? Of course, if you have knowledge about what is the man in the middle attack and how it would be done. In case you don't, we already have a lab for managing the attack, but I'm just trying to check your knowledge before I go further. Right? Okay, so the keyword here is that we have insecure infrastructure, or we use insecure protocol in communication, which makes the data in clear text form, which means anybody captures this data will be able to read the content. That's the right answer. But how to redirect? You mentioned we use insecure network and the hacker redirects. So I'm asking here about the part of redirection. How hacker can be able to redirect the traffic from one machine to other machine. When we come back or when we go back by our memory and start to think about the networking basics, we discussed in networking, in even in the class or other type of courses, there is a protocol called the Address Resolution Protocol or ARP protocol. Can anybody gives me information about what is the ARP? So when we yeah, yeah, it has a lot of function or a very important function with the IP address. In any network, we usually find two computers, for example. Each one has an IP address. To cut it short, what do we mean by IP address? What is your definition for IP address? It is an address at the end. It tells me who is communicating with me, for example, to understand how to reply back to him or her, right? Yeah, so IP address is just an address that define who are the members of a specific network to help devices to reach each other using unique address, which is the IP address. But all of the devices, in case we have this first one, which is has IP address of 1, and second device has IP address of 2. Is there anything that I am illustrating is not clear to all of you, or we are keeping up? Okay, so how these two devices will be connected? What is the device that will be the intermediate device between these two PCs or these two computers? Okay, but assuming that we are in the same network. Okay, we usually has like a switch, and this switch is what connected the devices with each others. If we are talking about a LAN, in this case, we are talking about a switch that connected devices with each others, right? Okay, so can the switch do routing? If I had a switch between two devices, can the switch route the traffic? Or we have an old information that say that switches are work in layer 2, so switches cannot understand IP address, but it can understand the MAC addresses. Can we remember such information? Okay, in case you don't know, no problem. We had like a concept in IT or in network communication in general called the OSI model, which is consisted from 7 layers. Each layer is responsible for a specific objective, and OSI layer is related to IP, related to network communication. So, assuming that you are on your own device and you are trying to do like a browsing or browsing something on the internet, so you usually deal with Google Chrome application, opening a YouTube website, anything of this sort. So you are essentially here dealing with the application layer or a layer 7 application. Make sense? So the data that you are seeing on the layer 7 application, and remember, this is like a conceptual model that helps you how to understand how network communication looks like and how network communication works. So as a normal user, you are dealing with layer 7, which is the application layer. You see the data in human readable format. We know that computer understands the data in binary format, 0 and 1. Is that correct? So how we are normal user can deal with the data written in 0 and 1? Because we have an application layer, and this application layer makes the data formatted in a way that we can understand. But when you send the data in your browser, and in order to make this data pass through the cable, it needs to be translated to 0 and 1. So this would be the role of another layer called the presentation layer. The goal of presentation layer is to encrypt and decrypt the data, convert the text or image to binary data or binary format. And after then, session layer or presentation layer moves the traffic to what is called a session layer. The goal of session layer is very simple. Assuming that you have like a browser like this, okay? And in this browser, you have multiple tabs. So in first tab here, I will open LinkedIn. And in second tab here, I will open, for example, Facebook. So what will make the updates or messages that I send to Facebook to refresh the page come back in this tab and don't come back in the tab that is related to LinkedIn website? This could be one of the responsibilities of the session layer. Session layer make like session management to identify who requested the traffic and track back the response to make this traffic appear again on the same tab. This is like an easy explanation for what the session layer is. Clear? Okay, after then, the traffic which has been converted to binary format will move to a layer called a transport layer. What do we understand from the word transport? What do we mean by transport in general English, by the way? That's right. Consider it like a container, and this container will have the data stacked inside it. So we have a lot of types, a lot of types of data that can we share over internet, including images, videos, and so on, right? So what is the size of video that you usually deal with when you record a video using your camera for 5 minutes? How long this video can be if we are doing like high definition video resolution? It could exceed 100 megabyte, I believe, right? Something around this. Okay. So can we send the 100 megabyte in a single message, or we need to separate it? The logic says that we should separate these files, and the separation has a lot of objectives. First, because of the IP packet or the container cannot absorb more than 100 and 1500 bytes. This is one of the reasons. Second, the more I can segregate or segment the data and cut it into pieces, if there were a kind of network interruption, I can request the one who sends the data to me. Sorry, the transport header can absorb maximum of 1500 bytes of data, and that's like 1/1000 from the 100 megabit, I believe. Can you get this? Another reason for that I want to segment or separate the data to parts, that in case some interruption in network happened during the transferring this data, I could lose a small portion of data, which could be couple of this size, which can allow me after receiving all data to check if I received all data in complete form or not. If not, I will request to resend the data again, or send the small portion that I lost, not the total 100 megabytes. That's right, because in transport we have what is called the TCP protocol and UDP protocol, if you are familiar with these two terms. Essentially, TCP and UDP are the transport layer protocols that are responsible in segmenting or cutting the data to pieces and marking each piece of data, so the other side which will receive the data will check if it received the full size or the full content of the data or not. We are talking about the process of sending data. Are you keeping up with me till now? Okay, so then we move to the next important step, which is I need to send the data from my device to Google device or Google or YouTube. How can I reach Google or YouTube or any website that I want to reach? How could I reach it? I should know what is the address, right? IP address. That's right. So in this case, I need the IP address because in network layer, I simulate as I am sending a postal email. So I need to add my source address and I need to add the destination address that I want to reach. Okay. So in network layer, we can find protocols such as IP, IPv6 are working in this layer. Got it? And after then, the data will be moved to the data link layer. And data link layer means that data will be exited from the interface and it will go to a switch. Unfortunately, the switch cannot read this message. So it will not be able to identify who is sending the data and who is receiving this data because he cannot understand IP address at all. He does not have the capability to check the message that is being sent from source to another destination and read this data to check what is the IP address of this data. Make sense? So that's mean for whatever data can be go to the data link layer, the IP header will be useless because the IP header is not understandable by the switch. So assuming that I have a switch and I have like 3 devices connected to this switch. Okay? So I have device 1 and 2 and 3. So if we are sending data from 1 to 2 and we encapsulating this data inside a packet include source IP address of 1 and destination IP address of 2, when the switch receives this packet, he will not understand what are you sending me. I cannot read the source or destination. So based on what, I will forward the traffic to this one and I will not send it to this one. Based on what? As I cannot understand what do we mean by IP packet. Can you get my point here? Sure? If in communication, each line is sending data to the next line automatically. Okay, again, we are talking about this graph or we are talking about the relation between network and data link layer? Okay, on my little diagram, I'm here asking you a simple question. I have 3 devices on the same switch. And assuming that device number 1 is trying to communicate with device number 2. So how to tell the switch that I need to reach number 2 only and please do not send the data to number 3? Yeah, but why? But till now we didn't discuss what is the MAC address. The device is sending IP packet that includes source IP address and destination IP address only. And the switch does not have the capability to read such information. That's why we have another message when we send the data between devices that are on the same switch. This message is called the frame. And in the frame, we have another source IP address or source address and another destination address. But this time, this source and destination address are called the MAC addresses. And the MAC addresses is what can be read by the switch. So to make it more clear, in network communication, we start by sending the data. This data is being encapsulated inside TCP or UDP header, like the container. And then we attach to this TCP header IP packet include source IP address and destination IP address. But unfortunately, as we are connected through a switch, the switch will not be able to read this particular header. So we add another supporting header called the frame. And this frame include another source address, which is MAC address of the source, and destination address, which is MAC address of the destination. And then we send this data to the switch. The switch will use the source MAC address and destination MAC address to understand you want to talk with whom. So it will find that in the MAC address, the source MAC is my own MAC, right? And destination MAC address is the destination MAC address of device number 2. In this case, when the switch receives this data, it will send this data only to number 2, not number 3. Make sense? For all of you, does it make sense? Okay, what could be impacted if the data that intended to be sent from 1 to 2 reached device number 3 as well. Yeah, and which aspect of CIA that could be impacted here? Confidentiality. So we have here interesting question, which is how device number 1 can know the MAC address of device number 2 in order to add the MAC address in the message or in this new message. How can device number 2 can know the MAC address of device number 1? IP address can be easy to be remembered, and end user can know the IP address without no problem. When we talk about a certain server, we only need to know what is the IP address of the server. We don't memorize the MAC address of the server, right? The printer and so on. So how can devices get the MAC address of each others in easy way to allow communication to done as I mentioned? This is the role of a protocol called Address Resolution Protocol or ARP protocol. So whenever device number 1 need to communicate to device number 2, he will do all of this activity until it reaches to layer 2. In layer 2, he understands that he need to take the data, these data, which include all of the above data, and insert it in a new message called the layer 2 frame. Okay? But the data of layer 2 frame is not complete. I know only my own MAC address as a sender. I need to know the destination MAC address of the one who will receive this traffic. Okay? So in this case, the sender device will send an ARP message. This ARP message simply asks, whoever have IP address 2, please respond to me by your own MAC address so I can send the data to you. This is the foundation of what is ARP. ARP is a protocol, and what do we mean by a protocol is a series of messages that are programmed in a specific way to accomplish a specific task. Okay? So in ARP, the sender device will send like a message to the whole network, asking the network and say, whoever has IP address or whoever has the IP address of 2, please respond to me by your MAC address because I want to send you a data. So when the device who has the requested IP address found or receives this message, it will reply by his own MAC address. Then the sender device will complete the frame and will send the data to switch. The switch will find the destination MAC address and will say, yes, I know how I can connect you with the required MAC address. Go to this port and you will reach the end device at the end. More clear? I want to make sure that all of other attendants are understanding it as well, because understanding OSI model is really a must to have skill for anybody who works in IT in general, not only security, by the way. Okay, so after creating the data link layer or creating frame, the data is moved to physical layer. And in physical layer, we send the data over the physical cable, whether it was wireless or wired cable or fiber optics cable. So in each layer, we can find set of protocols that are used in this layer. For example, when we talk about DNS, HTTP, SSH, all of it are application layer applications. When we hear the term TCP or UDP, all of this is a transport header application. When we hear the term network IP4, IP version 6, it is layer 3. When we talk about ARP or MAC address, we are talking about layer 2. And even for network devices, we found that cables are called the layer 1 equipment, while switches are called the layer 2 devices. Routers, firewalls are called layer 3 devices. So you may hear the term of layer 3 device, layer 2. Now you understand what do we mean by layers. So layer 2 is another term to describe data link layers that can only understand the MAC address and they make the forwarding decision based on the frame. What do I mean by forwarding decision? Forwarding the traffic from source to destination. The switch rely on the MAC address, source, and destination to make the forwarding decision, while the router is layer 3 because it makes the forwarding decision based on IP address, either version 4 or version 6. Fine? So when the other device receives the traffic, it will do the opposite. So it will receive the traffic from data link. It will remove the packet header, will open the message, will reconstruct the segments or data. Then it will send it to session layer. Session layer will understand that this application is coming to my web browser. So it will transfer or convert the binary data to another readable data, and then this data will appear in like human readable format on the application layer. Okay. Okay. So again, what is the purpose of the ARP protocol? Yeah. Excellent. And this is the excellent explanation. ARP is protocol that help in mapping MAC address to IP address. Okay, in automatic way. Do you would like to see how ARP messages could looks like? Yeah. Okay. So we have an application called Wireshark, and this application is used by network people, but uh, anybody should understand how to deal with Wireshark because it is very useful application. Because it can allow you to do a high level of troubleshooting or high detailed troubleshooting for network traffic. So what you are currently see now on the screen is all packets or all messages that either leave or enter my own machine. Okay, so what you are see here right now is source. We mean here source IP address. Destination, these columns. It means that it is the destination addresses that I am trying to reach. Protocol, here I am using UDP as you can see. Length, which indicates the length or the size of the message. You will not find a message that exceeds the 1500 bytes of data. Destination ports, which means which port that I am trying to reach. Remember yesterday when I was talking about port 443 and 445, and I was telling you that maybe not you, but maybe the other group. However, ports are something that differentiate what are the applications that I'm trying to deal with. For example, if I'm talking about web browsing usually use port 443. So whenever I use Wireshark and write a filter such as this one, TCP dot port, and you are not requested to memorize any of this. I'm just explaining to you what Wireshark is. So I will write TCP port double equal. The device my device is hanging somehow. I don't know why. So TCP dot port double equal not double equal equal 443. So when I do something like this, it will show me the traffic or the packets that I sent or received from a website. Why? Because I did a filtration based on TCP port 443. So it will show me only the traffic that was related to opening a website or when I go to website, so the traffic will be from my own machine, for example, to the website machine. or the website port. So here I was trying to open a website hosted on this IP address, and the traffic sourced from this port on my device to port 443 on this website. Can you get it? So Wireshark also can help me to identify ARP messages that my device is sending or receiving. So I will write here ARP and I will hit enter. Here will be, or here it can appear all ARP messages that my device sent or received since I started the capture using Wireshark. So all what you have now here on the screen is the ARP messages that my device sent or received. So for example, can you read this part here? Yeah, it is simply this way. But in info section in Wireshark, they try to translate you what is the objective. Who has X, tell Y. Okay? But in case you need to see how it looks like in reality, it will look like this. First, we have Ethernet frame. And this Ethernet frame includes source MAC and destination MAC address. And inside this frame, we have the actual ARP message, which say that I am MAC address of 85 or 58. I have the IP address of 254. I want to know to reach target IP address 105, but the target MAC address is not known or unknown. So whenever please you receive this message, the one who has this IP address, reply to me. You will find the next message is identical, but this time instead of all zeros MAC address, you will find the MAC address written in the screen or written in the field. And the info about this message is who has the second message is a reply for indicating IP address 105 is at this MAC address. The PC or the device that asked for the MAC address, when it receives this message, it will start in generating actual data. Let me give you an example. For me or in my device, I will try to do a ping. Of course, all of us know what the ping is, right? Ping is a network testing tool, a utility that I can do a ping and write like, I will try to write an IP address that is not existing in my home network. So I will try to ping 192.168.1.60 and then I click enter. As you can see here, my device will start to send ARP messages requesting whoever has IP address of 60, please reply to me. But as you can see, as there is no one has this IP address in this network, there will be no reply to this specific message. And as a result, I will get ping failed or destination host unreachable. Okay? So assuming now I am pinging to another IP address, so but I just need to do like r-a to check what are the different machines inside my network. I'm not sure in reality, I'm not sure who is in my network right now from devices, smart devices, and so on. So I cannot memorize a specific IP address. However, the ARP message, the request should be answered before I can send the data back. So why all of this huge introduction and why we need to understand the ARP? Because in man-in-the-middle attack, the redirection utilize a vulnerability in ARP protocol. In man-in-the-middle attack, we will have two parties in the connection or on the network trying to communicate with each other normally. When this one asks for the MAC address of the second one will reply with its own MAC address. No problem. And I will understand that in order to reach this site, I need to send the data to this specific MAC address. But I will have a malicious actor in my network. And in order to make man-in-the-middle attack, you need to have a physical access to the victim network, by the way. So this malicious actor will use a tool that we are going to see just after a couple of minutes. And this tool will tell you that whoever asks for the IP address of X, the MAC address of X is on my device, not on X device. Whoever is asking about the MAC address of Y, The MAC address of Y is on my device, not on Y device. So what happened here is we got a manipulation with the ARP data or ARP information inside this network. So from the perspective of the switch that is mediating between these two devices, whenever someone asks him to reach X, he will find a new information tells that in order to reach X, go through this port. And in order to reach Y, go through this port as well. The only one from these three parts who know who is actually Y and who is actually X is the hacker only. He is receiving the data that are transferred between X and Y. He can open Wireshark on his own device, and in case these data are transferred in clear text form, he will be able to read this data and capture or extract good information from it. You got this? So as you can understand now, ARPA protocol provide mapping, and the man-in-the-middle attack, one of the techniques that can make it works is to play with the ARPA information, and that's what we are going to see right now. And what could be the impact of ARP of man-in-the-middle? Actually, a lot. We can affect the confidentiality, of course, because data will be received by someone who is not authorized to receive it, right? Second one, for the impact of our man in the middle, is integrity related issue, because we will have to, in other words, we will have to, or the hackers that can receive the data could play with this data and modify any part in this data. Like when I was telling you yesterday an example for someone who can be able to, let's say, capture the data of financial transaction, and after then he can modify the sender or the destination account and sends the data to another one. We can also affect the availability, because if the hacker or if the one who intercepted the communication does not respond back by this communication or forwarded the traffic between these two parties will not be able to communicate or reach each others. So man-in-the-middle attack actually is one of the attacks that affect all aspects of the CIA. But remember, in order to make man-in-the-middle attack worse, man-in-the-middle attack need to have users with the or victim or the hacker and targets are together inside the same network. So that's why we could have in our business requirements to separate guest network or meeting room network from the staff network. For example, we have a requirement to have all inactive ports logged or placed in unused VLAN, or any device that should access our network should be subject to a certain checks to ensure that this device has Windows system joined to our domain and have the recent antivirus version updated. Is that correct? So we have a lot of techniques to prevent against man-in-the-middle attack, but it's still a widely used attack. So let's try how man-in-the-middle attack in reality works. If you can remember yesterday, I was discussing with you what do we mean by the virtual machines and how we can use VMware Workstation, for example, to create virtual labs and practice on these labs to study and to understand how actual attacks or actual cyber attacks can be conducted. And one of the examples of the attacks that we are trying to discuss now is man-in-the-middle attack. So our lab includes the following. On my workstation machine or on my virtual machine, I have three machines which are three different operating systems. The first one is a Windows machine, Windows 10, as you can see. And this machine is for or simulating a user inside the network. Normal user that is trying to deal or do his job inside the organization. The second machine is a web server, and it is like a machine that has like an application. It is based on Linux, but when I log into this machine and check the IP address of this machine, I will find that the IP address is 192.168.127.128. So from Windows 10 machine, I will open my browser here to make sure that Windows 10 machine is able to open the web browser. So remember, I'm just describing to you how the infrastructure that we are working on looks like. So from Windows 10 machine, I will try to open 192.162.168.127. I believe last IP address was 1128. Then I will hit enter. So as you can see here, this device or this PC is able to reach a web application. This application could be a financial application, business application, whatever. But at the end, this user that are on Windows 10 machine, which can be this machine, is able to reach the website hosted on the other machine inside the same network. Now we will have a third factor in our network, which is the hacker. The hacker is using a special Linux system called Kali Linux, and this Linux can be downloaded from the internet and include a lot of tools that can help you in studying security and doing cyber attacks by yourself for learning purpose. So if your laptop has good gears or you have a desktop that has that have enough quality or enough quantity of RAM, you can download Workstation. It is a licensed product, by the way, so you need to purchase a license. However, you can find free-to-use applications such Oracle VirtualBox, which will give you the same capability, by the way, and you can start to build your own lab. So on Kali machine, we may use Kali machine. And as I mentioned, Kali machine also should have network connectivity with these two devices inside the same network. So we tested that host A can reach with host B, right? Both of them can communicate with each other, right? Because I tried from the Windows 10 machine to open web application hosted on this machine and it opened with me. Am I correct? I need to ensure that Kali machine is also able to reach both the web server and the Windows 7 machine, because the most important aspect is to ensure that devices can reach each other. So, don't know what is happening on my device. 127.128. So I can reach the web server because the ping is working. And the most important thing, I need to know the IP address of this machine as well. So I will open the CMD. And I will write ipconfig command. So the IP address is 155. So I will also try to, if I can reach 155, and it will work. So the next is when we look to the Windows 10 machine, if we hit the command arp-a, we will find that Windows 10 machine can see the web server. MAC address end with what? Can you record this MAC address or last 4 digits? 7370. Which means from layer 2 perspective, the MAC address mapped to this IP address should end with these values. What we are going to do next is using our Kali machine, we will run a tool called EtherCap-G, and this tool is specialized in making a man-in-the-middle attack. So I will start my tool, and in order to start this tool, I need to give admin privilege. And by the way, if you are not familiar with what I'm writing on the screen, this is not a magic. In reality, man-in-the-middle attack scenarios is very easy to be conducted. Anyone can conduct a man-in-the-middle attack in case he had enough time. I can give you resources, give you walkthrough guide, and you will do it by yourself in matter of hours. First time, but second time you can make it in minutes. So don't assume that what I'm doing here is hard, but in reality, it may be a new thing to you. That's why it is not maybe looks complicated. However, The most important aspect in what I am discussing is not how to do the attack by yourself, but to understand what was the reason of attack to happen from the first place. If you understood what is the ARP, what is the OSI model, what is the relation between IP and MAC address, you are in a good stage. But I'm just here trying to express to you how significant this attack could be. Okay? So I will start my EtherCap tool. And now I will do a scanning for the network. And after the scan, I found that I had this list of users or IP address inside the same network. All of these hosts are virtualized hosts on my laptop. So it seems like I have a lab that I can play with and test whatever I want. I need to do the man-in-the-middle attack between the Windows 10 machine, which ends with 155, and the Linux machine, which is the web server 128. So I will add it to target 1 and add the second host to target number 2. And then I will start by clicking here to do ARP poisoning. And ARP poisoning will make the poison or spoofing of ARP information for Windows 10 machine and Metasploit. Now, when I check the ARP information on Windows machine, I will find that IP address or MAC address of web server is no more linked with this value. It is now linked with this value, which is actually the MAC address of the Kali Linux machine. If I opened a new tab and wrote here fconfig, I will find that the MAC address of the Kali machine is ending by 55. Can you see this? So from the perspective of these two devices inside the network, I am now host A, no host B exists on this device, and host B, no host A exists only on this device. To make sure host B understands the same, from the Kali or the server Linux machine, I will write the command ARP, and it will load ARP information. So I can see right now that ARP information of 155 is linked by MAC address end by 9855. So it is essentially the same. So from Kali machine, I can simply open a new tab. And do you remember Wireshark, which I used on my own machine to show you the ARP messages? I will run it also from Kali machine. So I will make a sudo Wireshark. I will insert the password. And when the Wireshark got started, I will request to start the sniffing or start the traffic capturing. And after then, I will go to the Windows 10 machine and I will try to open the web browser and try to open the web server. So as you can see, Wireshark started to capture many traffic. However, I will go to Windows 10 machine. I will open the browser. I will refresh the page. The browser will be refreshed, and then I will enter the word admin, and the password is test capital in capital form, and then I will click enter. Then I will go to the Kali Linux machine, and I will do a filter that call IP address. I need to capture only or filter on data that was between 126, 129, 128, 192, 168, 127, 155, and in case I need to capture the data that was between these two devices only, IP address 192.127.128. Then I will click enter. As you can see here, all traffic that should be between 128 and 155 is now visible from the Kali Linux machine. I can simply click on any one of these messages and select follow TCP stream. And after then, I can search inside this stream for the word username. So I will find that there is a username mentioned multiple times. And at the end of the text, I will find that there was a username that was requested by the customer or requested from the system user. And after then, the system users entered the username and they entered the password, and which was test. And this data would be, can be visible, and the hacker can capture it using Wireshark. Clear? So how to mitigate from Wireshark? In fact, a lot. Network security team, not from Wireshark, sorry. How to mitigate against man in the middle based on ARP poisoning. We have a lot of techniques which we will discuss, but network security team is the team that is concerned to deploy security controls that can protect against such attacks by implementing port security, by implementing network access control server. A lot of techniques actually is being used nowadays in the organizations to limit the possibility for successful attack such as this one. So here I'm describing the concept of man in the middle attack. In case you need to take like a screenshot, I'm describing step by step. So first I try to access B on port 80 to ensure they can reach each other's. I here classify that switch can understand the MAC address only. We will do ARP spoofing, and A will know that MAC at C and B MAC will be at C. Hacker need to make a special configuration. I am specifying some other additional configuration that are not illustrated in the lab. However, the goal of this lab is not to teach you how to do man in the middle again. We are just trying to understand how significant the impact can be of the middle attack and cyber attacks in general. So man in the middle attack is not only based on ARP spoofing, but it can be also based on IP spoofing or in DNS spoofing, which means I do not need to have a physical access always to the network to do man in the middle attack. But all of us know what is the DNS, right? What is the DNS? Yeah, it is like a way that we can use in order to, let's say, in order to map or translate username or IP address to, let's say, host address, such as I cannot remember the IP address of Google, but I can remember and memorize the host name of Google. So whenever I write google.com, my device will go and ask a server called the DNS server, and DNS server will tell me that what is the IP address related to the host name of Google. Then I can communicate with this IP address. Remember, based on our understanding into OSI model, in IP packet, we enter source IP and destination IP, not source IP and destination host name. So at the end, I need to translate the host name to an IP address. And the directory that can help me in do such a translation will be something or a server in the network called DNS server. Clear? So hackers can simply manipulate the DNS records by either attacking the DNS server, and instead of writing the google.com or Gmail is mapped with a specific IP, they could map this IP address to another malicious IP address. So you, from your website or from your perspective, you will think that you are contacting the real Google site. But in reality, and due to that DNS server was compromised and it replied to you with an invalid IP address or a manipulated IP address, you will be contacting a different Google website or a different website that looks like your banking website, but in fact, it is not. And such attack can also help in making another scenario of the man in the middle attack, but this time based on playing of what? DNS. Got it? So that's why security of DNS is very important as well. When we talk about hardening antivirus, making security, hardening of devices, all of this stuff, when we talk about security, the people of IT infrastructure who are responsible about managing the DNS server need to be aware about such attacks to understand what could be the different security controls that can be implemented from their side. And by the way, not always the changes are done on the DNS server. We all know about what the host file is, right? On Windows system. Host file. Anybody? Host file. Can anybody recall what does it mean? Okay, so simply host file should be located in your C drive in your system 32. I believe in Windows I have a lot of data on C, so inside the system 32, and then you will go to the, I believe, etc or drivers. However, we can Google where the host file is, but it is in drivers, etc, and then we will find a file called the host file. We will open it using Notepad++, for example. So in host file, it will looks like this, and you can open the host file. And for example, I am able, so I cannot edit this file, by the way. So I need to open CMD as administrator. And open the Notepad+. And then from Notepad+, I need to open the location of the host file. So I believe it will be in C again, Windows 32, System 30, Windows 32, System 32, driver, and then etc, and then host file. I need to select all file. So this what looks host file looks like. So I can simply go here and write that 127.0.0.1 is equal to www.facebook.com. Before saving this host file from my own device, I am able to open Facebook with no problem or with no issue. But now, when I go and save this host file to my device and go again and try to open Facebook another time, of course I need to do kind of flushing for DNS records. So to remove the old mapping of Facebook. But I will try to do something, which is I will try to open a new private browser from Firefox. So I opened another web browser, and I will try to open Facebook from this browser. I believe I need to do a flush for DNS records, but I'm not sure if I do so, that could result in disconnection. So in order to flush DNS, ib config flush DNS. I'm not sure if I did this command, it will result in disconnection of Zoom. I'm not sure about this, but I will try to do this. In case we got disconnected, I will come back again. So now I did a flush for DNS records. So now I will try to open Facebook once again. It is opening, it's still opening. So I don't know what could be the reason. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is, or what I'm trying to express here is, That host file provide, like, let's say, a way to input, like, translate information between name and IP address without asking the DNS server. Can you get my point here? Yeah, I believe so. I believe that's why it didn't work it. So just second, please, just second. Okay. Anyway, could we take like 15 minutes break? I believe we can take our first break now. I can retest this scenario again. Fine. Okay, so see you after 15 minutes.